Coming up on this edition of the Next Man Up podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network, Kenny Roda and I discussed the Browns against the Ravens, the tough loss on Monday Night Football to the Baltimore Ravens, but the quality performance by Baker Mayfield. We also get into the Cleveland Indians changing their name and the Cavaliers preparing for their 2020-2021 season. Welcome to the latest edition of the Next Man Up podcast, brought to you by Chase Smith, producer, director extraordinaire of the Press Play Podcast Network, the fast-growing Press Play Podcast Network that's taking over the world. For now, Roadman and I will talk about the Cleveland Browns, given that they were coming off of an incredible game last night, Monday night. The Ravens defeated the Browns 47-42. Roadman, if I would have told you before the game that these two teams would have come to the lakefront on Monday night and combined for 89 points, you would have said to me what?
I expect that out of the Browns defense, but could the offense score enough to win the game for the Browns defense? And unfortunately, D-Man, that's what happened. Here's what I learned about the Browns defense. The 3 games where they had that nice stretch, Mother Nature was the 12th defender for the Cleveland Browns. And without Mother Nature helping the Browns defense, teams can throw and run all over them at will. I'm not surprised by it, and it concerns me moving forward. But having said that, the offense played extremely well yesterday. And whenever you score 42 points, D-Man, I don't care what level you're playing. You should win a game if you score 42 points on offense. Unfortunately, the defense gave up 45, and then, of course, the safety late in the game, 47-42, the final score. So it would not have surprised me, had you told me that before the game started, that a lot of points were going to be scored because the defense just isn't that good. They're hurt. They're banged up. They don't have any real playmakers outside of Myles Garrett, who was, I don't know if he had the COVID effects, recovering from that still, had the elbow injury during the game. He did not impact that game much at all last night, and they need him to impact the game. If the Browns defense does not get a turnover, they're going to give up yards and points. So they better get a turnover or multiple turnovers to give the ball back to the offense if they want to win against a better team. And they got out in front of Tennessee and held them off. They went back and forth with Baltimore, but unfortunately, off the toilet and onto the field to throw a 44-yard touchdown pass, even though he says it was cramps. I'm not buying it. I think he had to do some business, and he did it in the locker room with Lamar Jackson and then out on the field. Man. I give him credit for coming out there, and it's just that they are who we thought they were. A team that could score a lot of points. Baker Mayfield's playing very well, but a defense that's going to give up a ton of points. And D-Man, the stat of the day. You want the stat of the day? I'm going to give you it whether you want it or not about the Browns defense. You ready? The Browns defense this season has given up on 4th down. Okay, D-Man? The opposition, 20 of 23 on 4th down plays this year against the Browns defense. That's 87%, I think, if you round up.
Wow.
You got to be able to get off the field. And what was it? 4th and 5. Here comes Lamar Jackson. He was finished wiping. He got up off the toilet. He ran out, put his shoes on, and then he threw a touchdown pass to a guy who couldn't catch a cold, standing butt naked, soaking wet in 30-degree temperatures out there. The Brown, the former teammate of Baker Mayfield at Oklahoma, and then he leads them down the field for the game-winning field goal as well. So kudos to Lamar Jackson, but the Browns defense, horrible on 3rd downs, worse on 4th downs, and you got to be able to get off the field.
The Roadman, a lot to unpack there with your opening statement.
Yeah, I rambled. I apologize. I got on a roll there. I apologize.
That's not, when I say a lot to unpack there, that's not a euphemism for you rambled. There's so much info, so many nuggets, including Jackson supposedly going to the growler, at least in the eyes of Roadman. Who knows what it was, but I felt comfortable when McSorley was in the game, even though in fairness to McSorley, he put that ball right on Brown's hands on third down.
Oh, wait, third down. Yeah, they didn't get off the field on that play with a third-string quarterback. I'm sorry. Go ahead, D-Man.
Yeah, I mean, in McSorley's defense, that should have been a first down. But you made many great points. No, foremost among them, the weather was a great defender, was an assistant to the Browns defense, covered for a lot of ills. And you are so correct there, because you wonder what the Vegas Raiders could have done with Derek Carr if the weather had been benign. You wonder if Deshaun Watson were able to throw the ball, even with targets limited because of injury. And of course, the trade of DeAndre Hopkins in the offseason. You wonder how much more Deshaun Watson could have done than I think $163 was his passing yardage. And in last night, I don't know that, Lamar Jackson beats you with 163 yards. There's that number again. I'm pretty sure that was Watson's total as well. I mean, Lamar Jackson, 11 of 17 for $163, 1 TD. And, before he came in to throw that fourth down, because that's one pass completion. And then he had 4, I believe, on the field goal possession. So that's 5. Going into that fourth down throw, he had 6 completions for the game.
Right.
And you still lost to this guy, and your defense gave up 45 points because we don't count the 2 for the safety. Lamar Jackson, in addition to the 163 yards passing, 9 carries for 124 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a Monday Night Football record for rushing yards by a quarterback. And I heard some people say, well, if Jackson had gotten his cleat situation right, he might have been able to run for 300 yards because he was slipping and sliding on the shorter cleats. But in fairness, a lot of guys were giving up maybe that extra 1/10 of a second so they could dig into the ground better. And Jackson said, I'm going to take my chances with the shorter cleats because I want to be quicker. And as it turned out, he had to give in because he kept slipping and sliding. So I'm not sure I buy automatically that Jackson would have rushed for 200 or 300 yards if he had longer cleats. But it is disappointing for sure, the Browns defense, even though this is what's so weird about it. I was saying this on the End Zone show on WTAM 1100 last night. It felt like the Browns defense was a sieve. It felt like they were giving up big plays all night. It felt like the secondary was blowing coverages every which way you looked. And yet, the total number of first downs for the Baltimore Ravens was 25. That's not a bonanza compared to 33 for the Browns. Their total yards was under 400. It was 385. So that number, that total isn't eye-popping. It's not mind-blowing. And, the passing yards, the net passing yards wound up being 154. So you sit there and you go, really? The secondary looked like it was getting beat all the time, and yet they only gave up, fewer than 400 total yards, fewer than 170 passing yards. But what you hit on was what is most important. It's not even the amount of yards, it's the timeliness of it. The Browns defense simply is not able to get stops when it absolutely positively needs to. And on the fourth down play, when he came in for the injured McSorley, the Browns did blitz. And I saw 5 and maybe a 6th guy started to come in and then backed off in sort of a zone scheme to maybe pick something off over the middle. So it might have been 6 that started the rush, 5 that finished the rush. And so you give Joe Woods, the DC, the defense coordinator, credit for at least trying to blitz them there and not trying to sit back with a 3-man rush and see if you can cover all the zones. And yet Jackson was able to get out to his right and have plenty of room to roam. He probably could have run for the first down if he wanted to. And then Brown was wide open behind everybody. And so that was a disaster. But what I did try to say when I was watching the defense giving up plays at inopportune times was I sure hope this defense would have looked different with Denzel Ward, Greedy Williams, and Grant Delpit. And I know that every team could say they had injuries, and the Ravens were dealing with secondary injuries too. But I think that this team, this Browns team, in its state of development, needs to have, guys that you counted on when you acquired them or drafted them. And in the case of Ward, I mean, he's counted on to be your lockdown corner. Delpit was supposed to be a starter from day one, and Greedy Williams was most likely going to be a starter sooner than later. So none of those guys is in, and I don't know how Grant Delpit's going to come back from the serious injury in training camp. Or it might have even been rookie mini. I don't know how, or did they even have rookie minis this year? I don't think so. But in any event, it was early in camp. And I don't know about Greedy Williams and the shoulder. You're hearing about a nerve situation. So who knows there. But the bottom line is a defense that's already challenged cannot afford to have pieces missing. And as you said, Myles Garrett just not being the Myles that we are accustomed to seeing. So that was a big problem for the Browns for sure.
I heard this on my show today. I forget which caller told me this on the Kenny and JT show on WHBC, but it's a great line. And this pertains to Denzel Ward, Greedy Williams, and I'll throw Kyrie Irving in here on this one as well. The best let me get this right. The best ability is availability.
Ray Farmer.
If you're not available, right, then you can't help the team. Was that a Ray Farmer quote? Is that what?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Yes, it is. Yes, it was.
Yeah. I'm amazed that it was Ray Farmer who said that, because he was one of the worst general managers in the history of the NFL. But that quote, okay, I don't know if I believe it anymore. Okay, I will. The best ability is availability. And Denzel, as good as he is when he's out there, he's not available 16 times a year. Greedy Williams, he's not out there. He can't help you. So yeah, we can say, well, they're hurt on defense.
Yeah, I didn't want it to sound like excuses. I didn't. That's not what I was trying to do.
I'm saying, you can't count, and then you got to count on Zendejo, and I hope he's okay. I know he's got a concussion, but how he, is still a starter on this team, maybe it's because of the injuries. Carl Joseph,
MJ Stewart was exposed.
He was
again.
Terrible yesterday. Money Mitchell was anything but money yesterday. He got beat on that touchdown pass late in the game. So the defense, I felt bad for the offense, and I give Baker credit about not pointing fingers after the game, right? Because let's be honest, you score 42 points, you should win the game. On offense, you score 6 touchdowns, you should win the game, okay? And I'll point the fingers. The defense sucks. That's the bottom line. When the weather's good, they can't stop anybody. And so I feel for that offense to put up 6 touchdowns, over 400 yards. Baker played his ass off yesterday. He bounces back from basically a pick 6. Okay. It was returned to the 1-yard line. They scored on the next play. He didn't let that bother him. And that was impressive to me, that he was able to put that in the rear view mirror, look out the windshield, see what was ahead, and drive down on the next 2 drives and take the lead 35-34 after being down 14 points. So I give Baker Mayfield a lot of credit for his performance. I think his performance yesterday might have been better than it was in the first half against Tennessee, because they were playing a better defense and his team got behind and he faced adversity and overcame that. So kudos to the Bake Show, as you like to say, and Kevin Stefanski, who seemed to have a good marriage right there with the play calling. I like what I'm seeing out of Stefanski's aggressiveness on 4th down in certain situations. I love the first drive, the scripted first 15 plays, a thing of beauty. And Baker's starting to grow on me, okay? Because I was a doubter when they drafted him number 1 overall. And after last season, I had my doubts. But what I'm seeing, 23 touchdowns this year, 7 interceptions maybe, I think somewhere in that vicinity. He's starting to command the offense. And I'm starting to see the swagger and the confidence that Baker showed when he was at Oklahoma playing quarterback for the Browns. And that's good news for this offense.
Yeah, Roadman. Before I dive into my take on the Bake Show, the last 6 quarters for the Cleveland Browns defense.
Uh-oh.
You're talking about 28 points allowed to the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah.
Then you're talking about 45. We'll subtract 7 from that to make that, 38?
Yeah.
So 38 plus 28 is, by my math, 66 points that this defense has allowed, because I took away the essential pick six,
right,
the 1 yard line, 1 rush for 1 yard. You still could have gotten a stop there. It goes against the D. But realistically, though, 66 points in the last 6 quarters, by my count, is just beyond alarming. And as you said, if the wind's not howling or it's not sleeting or something crazy like that, this defense is in trouble.
D-Man, in the playoffs, you want the Browns to play. I don't care who they play. You want them to play outside where the weather could be a factor. That's going to help their defense. You don't want to play indoors against the team in the playoffs with this defense. You want Mother Nature to be that 12th defender for you.
Yeah, that's true. And I guess, again, what's scary about this is the Browns gave up, we keep saying 45 out of 47, but what's weird is they gave up all those points with, as we pointed out, under 400 yards allowed in total offense. And specific to Lamar Jackson, his total yardage was 287. Now that's good, but it's not like break the bank good. It's not like you sit there and you go, oh my gosh, he threw for 400 yards. 287 total yards for the quarterback, and yet you're going to give up 40 plus. That's really, really alarming. But going back to the Bake Show, I thought his performance in the first half was a little bit uneven, okay, because he made some good throws, but I also think the Ravens sped him up a little bit. They had him, I wouldn't say rattled, but a little jittery in the pocket. And you started to hear Greasy Brian Greasy and Louis Riddick referencing, or at least inferring, that Mayfield needs to figure out the man coverage situation. Because when the Ravens were playing zone, Baker was doing just fine. But when Martindale, the DC for the Ravens, switched it up a little bit and went to the man, it felt like Baker was holding on to the ball a little too long. Now, in fairness to Bake, it's entirely possible that his receivers were not getting the necessary separation. And when you were watching replays, it certainly didn't look like these guys were flashing wide open. As much as Jarvis is a gritty, gutty competitor, and we like Hollywood Higgins and Peoples-Jones might be emerging, they're not anybody's definition of burners. They're not guys who are going to separate easily, you would think. Then, however, the receivers would counter by saying we were grabbed all night.
And
the Ravens doing what the Ravens do.
Right.
And to me, a microcosm of that was Marcus Peters, who's one of the most physical corners you're going to get. Obviously very good, but very physical, likes to grab, get away with as much as he can. Peters on the Hollywood Higgins touchdown was so busy grabbing him that he tripped over Higgins and took himself out of the play because he was so busy trying to, grab him and hold him. And that's why Higgins was able to run free before the safety could get over. But Baker in the first half, a little bit uneven. Second half, though, this was the Baker Mayfield that you drafted number 1 overall. This was the guy who was balling. He's just out there slinging it. He's talking to Chase Smith going, hey, Chase, am I delivering for you like you want me to? And Chase is like, you better believe it. I mean, this was the guy that you expect to see on a regular basis, even though that's, unrealistic that even a great quarterback is going to be great every week. But the number 1 overall pick was out there in the second half last night. And he's just making plays, fearless. He threw some heaters. I mean, you saw serious velocity and serious spin on more than a few of his throws in the second half, and they were on target. So I really, really enjoyed watching Baker Mayfield throw the football, especially in the second half. And I think that his teammates were responding to him. They were responding to his leadership. And, when you talk about the quote unquote franchise quarterback or the quarterback that you're going to grow old with, the guy that you want to try to win with, there are so many factors that you consider or that I'm sure an organization considers. The ownership, the front office, specifically the front office and the coaching staff. It's not just arm talent. It's not just the ability to throw the ball through a brick wall or even, have a great touch on a pass. When you're dealing with the quarterback position, there are plenty of intangibles in addition to the tangibles. And one of the most important intangibles, obviously, is that it factor. Do guys gravitate to this dude? Do they rally around him? Do they want to ball out for him? Do they want to sell out for him and give up their bodies on a dive or not gator arm it over the middle if he's sending them over the middle and he's throwing it over? Do you really want to sell out for this guy? And I think what you saw last night was the group saying, you know what, Baker's leading us somewhere, hopefully a victory. We're going to follow him and we're going to do everything in our power to support him. And we're going to go all out. And I'm not saying that, the Browns don't go all out every week, but I think you know what I mean. You could see the body language and you could see the response when a team believes in a quarterback. And I think that's what you saw last night. So even though the Browns lost, and I said it on the air, I was on the air when they lost. I said, this is a bitter pill. It's going to take me about 5 or 6 minutes to get over it. And my producer said, well, you got to get over it right now because we're on the air. I would have preferred to walk out of the room, vomit whatever I had in my stomach because we lost to the Ratbirds, and then come back into the studio. But I got over it while I was talking. But if I'm going to take solace in that loss, it's going to be that Baker Mayfield, not that he hasn't yet, but this was like almost his defining moment as a leader in his 3 years as an NFL quarterback, where he was going up against a really good team in prime time, and his team desperately needed him to complete passes. I mean, he couldn't just be a game manager. They needed a number 1 overall pick to show up last night, and that's exactly what Baker did. So out of the bitter disappointment of losing to the Ravens is, I think, the best example yet of Baker Mayfield as a legit leader who's going to inspire his teammates.
Last 2 weeks against 2 playoff teams, Tennessee and Baltimore, 1 on the road, 1 at home, 1 in prime time. 7 total touchdowns, D-Man, right? He threw for 4 last week against Tennessee. He threw for 2 more last night and ran 1 in. His mobility yesterday was a positive factor as well for the Browns. So 7 touchdowns created or involved, involving Baker Mayfield the last 2 weeks against 2 teams that were playoff teams a year ago. That's showing you that he's making strides. He's gaining confidence, and he can be I think, and again, I was a doubter. I think he showed enough to Andrew Berry right now that they have to pick up his 5th-year option. Okay. I'm not saying sign him to a contract extension where he's getting $35, $40 million a year. I'm saying pick up that 5th-year option on his rookie quarterback, which will pay him between 20 and 25 million, and then go from there. That's what I would do if I were Andrew Berry. I'd get that taken care of. And that way you've got him under contract for the next 2 years. And then you worry about a contract extension some point next season, D-Man.
Yeah. And Kenny, you mentioned the touchdowns responsible for. I'm looking at 700 yards of total offense. in the last 2 games combined.
Okay.
340 plus passing yards. Let me see, at least
343 throwing and I think 23 rushing last night. So that was against the better defense, the Ravens defense, much better than Tennessee's.
Right.
You know?
And his so last week against Tennessee, he was 25 of 33 for 334 yards and the 4 TDs, no picks. This week, 28 of 47, 343, 2 TDs, 1 pick, and a costly pick, no doubt about it. But basically, and when you add the running in, of course, it's 700 yards total offense with that many touchdowns responsible for. Another nice number, and I understand that Tennessee's rush is nothing to be, right home about, but their pass rush. But last 2 weeks, no sacks. So Mayfield has avoided the sacks. And yes, his offensive line is really good. I grant you that. But Baker is generating offense. His last 3 weeks, I'm a big believer in total QBR, scale of 1 to 100. Baker was miserable last year in total QBR. This year, I think it's 72.1, which is 9th in the league. And his last 3 games, 89.8, 88.4, and 81.6. So Baker Mayfield is more than doing his job, and that's what you need to see. And I totally agree with you. I think that Baker Mayfield deserves to have that 5th-year option picked up. I mean, the critics of Mayfield, they're always going to be there. But I think critics of every quarterback are always going to be there. I mean, even Tom Brady is not immune to critics, even Drew Brees or Aaron Rodgers. Every great quarterback or average quarterback or good quarterback or terrible quarterback is going to have the critics. So just because Baker is going to be signed, if he is going to be signed as we think he will be, that doesn't mean the criticism will go away. And it doesn't mean the Browns can afford him to get complacent. But what I try to ask those who criticize Baker just by waking up in the morning, what's the alternative? I mean, really, if you want to get Baker out of here so bad, or you think he stinks, or you don't think he's worthy of number 1 overall pick, what are you going to bring in that's any good? Or that's better than he is automatically? Because the great quarterbacks in the NFL aren't going anywhere. Teams are not getting rid of the great ones. They're probably not even getting rid of the very good ones. So if you think you're just going to grab a quarterback on the market because a team is going to let him go and that quarterback's any good, you're sorely mistaken. So that leaves the draft. You're not going to get a street quarterback to come in and better than Baker. So that leaves the draft. Well, Browns aren't drafting high this year, okay, because they're winning. So guys like Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields are going to be gone, and other good quarterbacks are going to be gone. So I think Baker Mayfield has done enough, more than enough, to show that he warrants the investment, and he's growing into a leader. I know he tried to be a leader right out of the gate, and it was working well in 2018 when the pressure was off because the Browns knew they weren't going anywhere. He was trying to replicate that Oklahoma swag and everything else, and it looked good against bad competition. Last year, everybody fell off the wagon, it seemed. But this year, you've seen Baker with more of the organic leadership. It's not, in my opinion, it's not the guy who is trying to be a leader. He's just being a leader because that's who he is. And the best way to lead, as Albert Bell once said, I do my leadership in the batter's box. The best way to lead for Baker Mayfield is to do what he did last night. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to gesture. You don't have to do anything post game. Just put up the numbers that you put up last night on prime time against a good defense and a good team, and your teammates will follow you. They don't need all the extra stuff that goes with it. If you want to do that, fine. But it comes down to production. If you're productive, those players, those teammates are going to follow you. And I think that's exactly what you're seeing now with Baker. Roadman, I want to go to one play, though, in particular.
All right.
In the Browns game against the Ravens. I was just wondering what you thought. You did allude to it when you said you liked Kevin Stefanski's aggressiveness. But down 14, last minute of the third quarter, you're down 34-20, and it's 4th and 4 from, I believe, the Browns 46. Would you have gone for it there,
Yes.
knowing that if you don't get it, the game's over?
Yes. Because you needed to score points. And what's the best part of your team? It's your offense, right? So let me put the game in the hands of my offense and have them make a play. And you had confidence in Baker Mayfield. I think there's a nice marriage and a connection between Kevin and Baker. And I loved Kevin Stefanski talking about some of those things are decided in the week leading up to the game in our game plan. If it's 4th and less than 5, we're near midfield, we're going for it, depending on what the score is and what the feel of the game, what's going on there. So I love that he did it twice. D-man, they went for it twice yesterday on 4th and got it both times.
Same possession,
okay?
yeah, 4th and 4th.
So I love that he was consistent and he was aggressive there. He went for 2 points. He was consistent again, being aggressive there, getting that point that nice job, you effing kicker, Cody Parkey, left off the scoreboard.
Just when we thought Parkey was reliable, he lets us down.
Field goal and an extra point. There's 4 points there. So I like that he was aggressive. Like I said, that opening drive, D-man, was a masterpiece. They get the ball. They go right down the field. Boom, 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 7-0. I'm like, damn, Stefanski's got something, man. They get this opening drive, the script. That's great. So I loved his aggressiveness. I had one question about Stefanski yesterday. Okay, one thing that why didn't you use a timeout against Tucker at the end of the game? It's the only question I had about him. And if that's the only one, it may not have mattered. Tucker would have, probably made the next one too. But that's the only thing I questioned him about yesterday was, why didn't you can't use him in a poker game after the game? Hey, I'll bet you my timeout I kept from the game. So why not, try and put some pressure on the veteran kicker? And he had one blocked, and that's why, D-man, he had one block. So, why not, try and make him think about that block or what? So, but that's the only question I had about Stefanski yesterday. I love what I'm seeing out of Stefanski. If I'm Andrew Berry, Jimmy Haslam in the front office, it looks like they finally have a guy with leadership skills, with X's and O's skills. He can handle the head coach and the offensive coordinator role, which we've seen guys like Pat Shurmur and Freddie Kitchens and Hugh Jackson all fail at. So the good thing about this organization moving forward, looks like they have their head coach, looks like they have their quarterback, and we know they have their running back.
Hello, Brooks here with the Books with Brooks monthly book club podcast. We read one book a month and then we talk about it. Books like Stephen King's The Shining or Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. If you're on the hunt for book recommendations and enjoy sparkling conversation, come read along with us and then listen in.
Hi, my name is Jeremy Powell, co-host of the Oranges, Oranger, Browns podcast. Check us out anywhere you listen to podcasts. For all your Browns coverage, post-game, pre-game, anything you need Browns, you'll find it here on the Oranges, Oranger, Browns podcast.
Hey, everybody, it's Sam Amico from Cavs on the Break, NBA podcast. Be sure to give us a listen for all your Cleveland Cavaliers recaps, analysis, breakdowns, draft talk, free agency. The list goes on and on. Give us a listen, Cavs on the Break, NBA podcast.
Hey, it's JD from the Hyman Podcast. Using a narrative storytelling approach, the Hyman Podcast was created to start conversations that need to be human. Week by week, I'll break down walls and barriers and make people wildly uncomfortable, all the while giving a voice to the voiceless and the marginalized. Consider this your personal invitation to be part of that conversation.
And you mentioned the Haslams, Jimmy and D. I've hashtagged it the year of the Haslams because their MLS franchise, the Columbus Crew, won the MLS Cup. And, I mean, I think without the Haslams, it's very possible that the Columbus Crew moved to Houston or was moved to Houston by their previous owner.
Yep.
And instead, the Crew stays in Columbus. And in the second year of Haslam ownership, they win the MLS Cup. So credit to Jimmy and D there. And I'll repeat, maybe I said it here. I know I've said it on my radio show. I give a lot of credit to the Haslams for how low key they have remained during this winning season for the Browns, during this banner season, as they chase the playoffs. You know, if I were in their position and I'd taken as much abuse as they'd taken and had as much trouble as I'd experienced as owners, because there's no doubt that up to this season it had been an abject failure. But if I were the Haslams in this situation, I'd be behind every microphone, in front of every camera, saying, "Look at me, look at me, look at me. I'm the Jerry." In Jimmy's case, I'm the Jerry Jones of the Midwest, and hey, look at us. We're the owners of this team. Instead, Jimmy and D have laid low. They've been really, really the silent partners here. They've let the players and coaches get all the credit. And obviously the front office, you don't hear much from them. So I give a lot of credit to the Haslams this year, the way they've conducted themselves. All right, we pivot off of football and soccer. We go to the the Cleveland Baseball Club, whether Paul Dolan wants to say so or not, whether he wants to acknowledge it or not. News was broken the other night by the New York Times that the decision is final. The Indians will come off of their name and find a new name. Honestly, those of us in Northeast Ohio were not surprised at all. It was just a matter of when was it going to be made official, and essentially the New York Times made it official by breaking the story. And then on top of that, Tom Withers of the Associated Press has the exclusive with Paul Dolan. And Paul Dolan tells Tom that another year of Indians, and then 2022 is when they anticipate having the new nickname, but the key is no Cleveland Baseball Club in 2021, like the Washington football team. So, Roadman, just your thoughts about the finalization, if you will, that the Indians are indeed going to change their name. Because when they initially sent out that statement in the summer and said they were going to mull it over
right,
and consider it, that was all but, yes, we're going to change. I mean, you're not going to issue that statement and then come back 6 months later and say, you know what, on second thought, we're staying with the Indians. So we knew they were going to change it. The question is, to Roadman, what are your thoughts?
Not surprised, expected it. Here's what I was told, D-Man. You're tied in maybe better than I am. Tell me if you've heard any of this. I was told that this was leaked not by anyone in the Indians organization, but by somebody allegedly with Major League Baseball, because they weren't happy with the speed of the process in which the Indians, were traveling to get this done. And to me, it was no surprise that it was leaked the night before the Browns were playing on national TV on Monday Night Football to gain some traction there as well. So, I have no proof of this. I'm just telling you what I've heard. And you know me, I think the commissioner is a buffoon for Major League Baseball. So I'm not a big fan of his. It did not help the Indians in any way, shape, or form to announce this when this came out, right? So there's no reason for them to have leaked this to the New York Times. Why not to Tom Withers? Why not to somebody at Cleveland.com? Why the New York Times? So that tells me it wasn't the Indians organization who leaked this. It was somebody in Major League Baseball trying to speed up the process. And I give Paul Dolan credit by saying, hey, look, we're not going to be the Cleveland Baseball Club. All right, next year, we're going to keep the Indians name for next year. We are going to change it. And Possibly that's in 2022, but we are not going to be rushed in to renaming our baseball franchise. And we're not going to go like the Washington Redskins did and call themselves the Washington football team. So I can't believe the Indians were happy with that story and the timing of it that leaked. So I give them credit for coming out the very next day when they weren't prepared. We were supposed to hear from Terry Francona, on Monday. Instead, the Dolans had to issue a statement or do an interview to talk about the New York Times story. So to me, it's not that big of a deal. We knew it was going to happen. It was a matter of time when it did officially happen that they were going to change the name. Now let the search begin, and let's hope they take their time and get it right and come up with a good new nickname for the Cleveland Indians or whatever they're going to be called.
Yeah, I was hearing, or I've heard similar stuff. I mean, I'm not piped in anymore like I used to be, or like I tried to be when I was running, trying to run with Paul Hoynes, the legendary Paul Hoynes, and I was his backup for a number of years at the Plain Dealer. And I would do my best to keep my ear to the wall and can I hear anything? But a couple of people I know in the game were suggesting what you did, and that is that MLB was leaking it, not the Indians, because number one, I don't think the Indians want to pick a fight with the Browns at this particular point. There's nothing in it for them.
Right.
Number two, the scheduled Terry Francona virtual presser was going to have to be blown up if it was leaked that night. You knew you'd have to blow up the Francona presser. So why would you schedule a Francona presser only to have it sabotaged? But also the more important thing is MLB a little frustrated? And that's possible that MLB's frustrated that maybe they didn't get as much of a definitive, yes, we're going to change it. Whereas the Dolan ownership, the Dolan Trust was saying, give us give us time. We'll do it on our own schedule. I appreciate Paul Dolan when you are able to talk to him. He's pretty blunt. He's pretty frank. He doesn't sugarcoat, and sometimes it gets him in trouble. I mean, remember the, enjoy him while he lasts or while he's
Lindor
here.
comment.
Lindor stuff.
Yeah.
And I bring that up because when he was talking to Tom Withers, and I read Tom Withers' story, he's exclusive. The one thing that startled me a little bit was Dolan said that if he'd had his druthers, or he was leaning toward maybe the interim name being Cleveland Tribe. And I'm going, what? I mean, you're coming off of Cleveland Indians.
Yeah. Tribe
is a nickname from the Indians that involves a TP and various chants and drums and all kinds of stuff. Why would you want Tribe to be your placeholder as you move off of Indians? I would just be like, okay, whatever I'm going to call myself in 2021, it's either going to be you're going to either stay with Indians like they're going to do, or you completely move off of Indians and go to Cowboys or freight trains or trucks or walleye or anything like. I shouldn't say Cowboys because Cowboys and Indians, but Cleveland walleye, Cleveland Ironmen, Spiders, Guardians, you name it.
Buzzards.
So yeah, it doesn't surprise me. And the other thing too is I believe at least one of the New York Times reporters isn't even in sports, so it was peculiar about that kind of a breaking news. But I mean, the Indians are going to be a different name, and I know a lot of people take it very seriously and they're very hurt by it. But I've always believed, as long as you have the professional team in your city, it doesn't really matter what their name is. Just that you have that professional sport in your city. I'm not going to get worked up over it like some people are, but I will grant those people their emotions, and the lifelong Indians fan, well, so am I, but some people see it differently, and the Indians is part of their culture and part of their fabric and their family bond and all that. that's not for me. It doesn't bother me, but I get it if it is important to you. And to me, if you're gonna if it's gonna be controversial, then move off of it. And I did read some stuff from people who profess to be Native Americans who said, we don't give a dang. We don't care.
Right.
We've had meetings about it, and nobody cares about these professional sports teams. It's you guys that are making this up as a big deal. But then I've also heard that it is important to the Native American culture that these names not be used, you know, and the monikers and the logos and the, you know, the Wahoo and all that. I just wonder how far it's going to go. Okay. Because the Washington Redskins, now I can say that because I'm saying in the historical context, they've been canceled to Washington football team and who knows what. The Cleveland Indians have been canceled to the Cleveland who knows what. Well, how many more are we going to go to? Are we going to the Atlanta Braves? Are we going to the Florida State Seminoles? Are we going to the Kansas City Chiefs? Where does it end? Where does the canceling end?
Right.
Specifically pertaining to the Indians, the Native Americans, and then extending beyond that, does the canceling go to the Fighting Irish? Does the canceling go to the San Diego Padres? And on down the line. I mean, how many more times are nicknames, or I shouldn't say nicknames, names of teams going to be canceled in the name of, you know, disgust or one particular group being angry about it?
That's a good question. And I think only time will tell on that, how far it goes. But I'm curious to see what the new name. I don't want a retread, D-Man. Okay. I don't want the Spiders.
I can't stand it. Yeah.
No, thank you.
And by the way, the Spiders aren't even associated with the Cleveland Indians of yesteryear. Okay. They were a different franchise.
So I don't want the Spiders. My partner JT on the Kenny and JT show on WHBC, he wants the Rockers. I said, I don't want my baseball team named after
no more guitars.
Yeah, I don't want it named after a WNBA team. No, thank you. I've seen enough logos with the guitars and all. So let's get creative. And the Guardians, I'm sorry. I'm not buying the Guardian thing, all right? I see that thing downtown. Sorry.
That's my wife's favorite name.
I'm sorry. No offense to your wife, but I hate it.
The lovely and talented Denise.
Nobody remembers that. It was so old. We're moving forward. Let's move forward. Let's come up with something that the city can relate to now, or is tied in with now. I don't know what that is. Okay. I've got to start making a list now that it's official. They're going to change their name. But I don't want anything like I want something fresh and catchy and that's going to be sellable and it's going to catch your eye and whatever it is. So I hope whoever they have in charge, they turn over every stone and take every idea into consideration before they say no and then come up with the new Cleveland baseball team nickname.
All right, Roadman, we'll wrap up this edition of the Next Man Up podcast by talking Cavs, talking NBA for the last few minutes that we have. The Cleveland Cavaliers begin their season in earnest December 23rd.
Yep.
Home against the Charlotte Hornets. They have a couple more preseason games. They played 2. They got 2 more to go. Roadman, your thoughts, your capsule look at the Cavaliers as they begin their first full season under JB Bickerstaff. Bickerstaff replacing the disastrous John Beilein tenure that ended before 1 year was even complete. He coached, I believe, the last 11 games of the season and won 5 and 6. Your thoughts on the Cavs under JB Bickerstaff?
I have no expectations for them whatsoever because it's a complete rebuild. That's what they are first faced with right now. It is a complete rebuild. Nice to see Isaac Okoro with the game-winning layup in his first ever, NBA game in the preseason. He played D on one end. That's what he's known for. He leaks out, gets the layup in the and one game winner. They beat the Pacers in the first game. He had 16 points in the fourth quarter, 18 for the game, bounces back with 15 more in game 2 as they beat the Pacers. Andre Drummond, I'm curious to see, how he fits in and if they keep him for the start of the season, for half of the season. What are they going to do with him? Kevin Love, you start the trade rumors now. Every season there's a trade rumor with Kevin Love. So where's he going to end up going, or reportedly going to go? So for me, I have no expectations. I think the over-under's 22.5 in a 72-game season. I think that's about right. So this is about development for me. So this is, can Colin Sexton continue to improve and play defense to go with his offense? Can Darius Garland rebound from having one of the worst plus minuses, or however they grade NBA players in the entire league last year after being the 5th overall pick? And can Okoro provide the defense that they needed, but also be that 3D guy, be able to knock down the triple? They say his shot's not broken. They feel comfortable they can get him to be consistent there, and his athleticism seems to be off the charts. So for me, those 3 guys are key, and then one other guy, and that's Kevin Porter Jr. I think KPJ could be the best player on this team if he can keep his head on straight off the court. That's the reason he fell to number 30 in the first round 2 years ago. We saw what happened at the airport this year in the offseason that he has to deal with. So if Kevin Porter Jr. can stay on the straight and narrow and focus on basketball and not misstep off the court and continue to build off of what he did last year, I think those 4 guys, those are the 4 that I'm watching the most for this team moving forward.
Yeah, Roadman, the Cavaliers of 2020, 2021 are a fascinating group, in my opinion. Granted, in a rebuild, but fascinating nonetheless. I keep expectations to a minimum, as do you. But I look at the decidedly young group of Sexton, Garland, Okoro, and KPJ, none of whom at this moment is over 21. I think the oldest of the group is Sexton. He turns 22 in early next year. So you got 4 guys, 21, 20, 20, and 19. Okoro being the 19-year-old. And then you have some decidedly grizzled veterans, such as Drummond and Kevin Love. Larry Nance Jr. seems like he's been around forever. He's not really that old, so it's kind of hard to lump him in as a grizzled veteran. And you don't have Tristan Thompson, who was a solid piece for this, even for a rebuilding team. He was a good piece. So it's interesting how they're going to develop under JB Bickerstaff. I guess the one thing I wish they would do is decide, and maybe they already have, is Kevin part of the next 3, 4, 5 years, or isn't he? If he's not, then you got to get him out of here.
Who wants him?
Yeah.
What can you get for him because of his bloated contract, $30 million a year?
That's the problem. Maybe they already have. They want to move him, and they just have no takers. But I'd hate to see this team develop under Bickerstaff as a young team with various components, and then you have Kevin Love there, and you're like, where does he fit? Now, maybe you're stuck with him, and maybe JB Bickerstaff makes it work, and Kevin Love turns into a veteran leader who's reliable, like maybe, I don't know, a Paul Millsap type who can, fit in with a bunch of young guys. But we'll see. The other one is Drummond. I just don't see the Cleveland Cavaliers being led by Andre Drummond.
Right.
And I'm not trying to disrespect Andre Drummond. It's just, it doesn't feel right in today's game that Andre Drummond is going to lead the Cavaliers. The leaders on this team, to me, are going to have to be Sexton and Garland and Okoro, given where you drafted him. But I just don't see Andre Drummond as a guy that everybody's going to rally around and go, all right, Andre Drummond's taking us where we need to go. So, and I know that he of course he was going to pick up his own, pick up his option for this year or activate his option.
Right.
So it's like I'm excited about watching the Cavs, but I'm also watching them with a little bit of hesitancy because of Love and Drummond, and I just don't know where they fit long term. But JB Bickerstaff, I trust him. You know, I didn't like the Beeline hire from the jump, but even I couldn't have imagined how disastrous it was going to be.
Yeah.
And thank goodness that they got out of it when they did. They didn't even let him get to the end of the season.
Right.
And, you know, going back to the Browns, thank goodness the Haslams decided that one was enough with Freddie Kitchens. You know, they could have made the mistake they made with Hugh Jackson and said, well, we'll give him a mulligan. We'll give him another shot. No. You got to recognize when a coach is drowning and you have to cut him loose. And that's what the Haslams did with Freddie. And that's what Gilbert did with John Beilein. John Beilein was a disaster. And clearly John Beilein was Dan Gilbert's pick. I mean, that was a Dan Gilbert hire. That was not a Kobe Altman hire. I don't care what anybody says if they're saying it. That was, you know, we know that Dan Gilbert had what's his name on his radar, the Michigan State coach.
Izzo, yeah.
Izzo.
The Michigan ties, you know.
He had Izzo on his radar for the longest time. It was as if Gilbert was fascinated and intrigued by a college coach. He desperately wanted to bring a highly successful college coach in to coach a younger team. He just picked the wrong one. And John Beilein was a mess. Thank God they got out from under it. They went back to the NBA name, JB Bickerstaff. And, you know, I'm looking forward to the season starting. But as you said, my expectations are minimal.
I'm hoping I get to see them. I've got YouTube TV, and I don't have Sports Time Ohio or Fox Sports Ohio yet. So I went to watch the game the other night, and I'm like, what the hell's going on here? I sound like Hank Stram. Yeah, I couldn't watch the game the other night, so I got to find another way to watch the game or hope that they come to their agreement so I can watch this young team. I'll still watch them. You know me, D-Man. I'm a basketball guy first.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
my love. I'm curious to see this young nucleus. They went out and got Thon Maker too. Figure why not? He's 23. He's a 7-footer. So if they get rid of Drummond or whatever, maybe they try and get Maker as a rim protector center.
JaVale McGee.
Yeah, a spaceman, JaVale McGee. What planet is he on this week? The one that J.R. Smith's on. Okay, they can, they can talk long distance now. So, but I'll be watching the Cavaliers. No question about it. I'm hoping my Monsters get started up in February. Knock on wood for some AHL hockey. And this weekend, D-Man, I got to throw this your way. 21.5-point favorites, the Buckeyes over your Northwestern Wildcats. What do you think? There's any chance for Northwestern to pull off the upset and shock the world, or no?
The only chance would be, God forbid, Justin Fields gets injured, and I pray that doesn't happen.
Right.
Because I went to Northwestern, but I've always said to my friends at Northwestern, I bleed, scarlet and gray. I was born and raised in Ohio, and I was a diehard Ohio State fan growing up, and I remained that way at college. I didn't stick it in people's faces, though.
Right.
I wasn't running around with my Buckeye gear on the Northwestern campus.
Same with me and the Steelers. I tried not to, everybody knew, right? But you try not to throw it in anybody's face, So,
but I think just to get to the Big Ten championship, incredible accomplishment by Northwestern. But the bottom line, if Ohio State gets up early, as I expect them to, the one thing Northwestern can't really do or doesn't seem equipped to do is play catch up. Right. They'll have a really difficult time in a track meet trying to go point for point. Now they rely on their defense to keep it from being a track meet, but all Ohio State has to do is pop in the DVR or the tape of the Michigan State game and say, okay, if we start believing that Northwestern is great, all we need to do is watch them struggle and lose to Michigan State, a team that we demolished. So, no, I don't expect Northwestern to win. I don't want them to win in this case. especially because a college football playoff berth is on the line. So I want the Buckeyes. I want to see Justin Fields dominate. And by the way, my lock of the weekend, though, is not even Ohio State.
What's that?
It's Clemson just dump trucking Notre Dame.
If they play the game, that JT was saying, and the same with the Buckeyes too. That's not a guarantee. We got to hope that nothing else happens COVID-wise for both of these, the ACC and the Big Ten championship game to be played. So keep that in mind as well. And I agree with you. I think Clemson will, hand it to the Crying Irish of Notre Dame. No doubt about it. Real quick, congratulations to Justin Fields, as you mentioned, Offensive Player of the Year in the Big Ten and the Quarterback of the Year in the Big Ten. And congratulations to Wyatt Davis from the Ohio State, Offensive Lineman of the Year, as they announced the offensive honors today at the Big Ten. Tomorrow, which will be Wednesday. We're taping this on Tuesday night. They'll announce the defensive awards and everything. But yeah, I expect the Buckeyes. I think they will try and do to Northwestern what they did to Wisconsin back in 2014 to leave no doubt. Okay, if there was, with some of the voters, 42-0, something like that. If they can do it, they want to do that to send the message that they belong in there. As tonight they were again voted as number 4. It's Bama, Notre Dame, Clemson, and Ohio State, the top 4 in the College Football Playoff Committee rankings. The final rankings will come out on Sunday.
Yeah, and I also think that Ohio State, the speed when you're putting them in that climate control condition on that fast track at Lucas Oil.
Yeah,
they very easily could exploit Northwestern there. I don't think Northwestern has the speed to keep up with Ohio State. But then again, I didn't think that a few years ago when they played in Lucas Oil and Northwestern made it a game. So we shall see. But I think Ohio State prevails. All right, Rod, thank you very much for taking the time, and keep up the great work with JT. And we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. It's always a pleasure, Chase. You rock, dude. We appreciate everything you do for us. Chase Smith, executive producer of the Next Man Up podcast. Keep doing what you're doing, brother.
Agreed.